Mass Communication Processional Party as they enter the arena. Please welcome the Gaylord College Deans, faculty, and our special guests, led by our Gaylord College banner carrier and 2014-2015 Outstanding Senior, Miss Lindsay Fisher. Our Gaylord College faculty marshals, Professor Kathleen Johnson and Professor Judy Gibbs Robinson. Please welcome our graduate candidates led by banner carrier Dr. Brian Carr. Please welcome our advertising candidates led by banner carrier and advertising highest Academic Achievement Award recipient, Mr. Nicholas Layton Howard. Welcome our broadcasting and electronic media candidates led by banner carrier and broadcasting and electronic media highest academic achievement award recipient, Ms. Sydney Allen. Journalism candidates, led by banner carrier and journalism highest academic achievement award recipient, Ms. Haley O'Hara. Welcome our professional writing candidates, led by banner carrier and professional writing highest academic achievement award recipient, Ms. Lauren Kasadyan. Please welcome our public relations candidates, led by banner carrier and public relations highest academic achievement award recipient, Mr. Andrew Matt.
Please be seated. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Convocation of the Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication. We're excited to see you here, excited about this very special day. I'm especially pleased to report that this building was recently air conditioned. And so, as someone who's been around here for a long time, I can assure you that that wasn't always the case, and we would be in a steam bath like you've never seen otherwise. In fact, I did my first television stand-up in this building many, many years ago, right up there in the corner. And I know the date when this building was built, because when you're nervous and you're practicing something like that, you say the first line over and over and over again, as our broadcast journalism students know. So I will never forget beginning. The year was 1929. Herbert Hoover was president. So. But don't worry, you on the shelf are safe. I think even though the building is nearing 100 years, I think you're doing fine. I did worry a little bit about your coming in. Saw several of the parents outside when the tornado sirens went off. And if you're from Oklahoma, this wouldn't bother you, but I could see you're coming from out of state, and with the notorious reputation of this area as Tornado Alley, you're about to attend your son or daughter's graduation, and all of a sudden the sirens go off. That would, I hope nobody was too alarmed by that. But we're all here. Hopefully we're cool enough and we're ready to get started with the convocation. I know that many relatives could not be here today, so we are live streaming this event. In fact, we started this practice several years ago in Gaylord College. We're the home of the university's stream team, created by our IT guy, Buddy Wiedemann, who was our announcer over here to begin. He's standing over there in the corner. But thanks to Buddy's efforts, you can see this around the world at ou.edu/GaylordLive. So if you want to communicate now with anybody you think may want to see this event, please do so. I would like to start by recognizing some special people who are here. And the most special of all guests today, except the graduates sitting in front of us, are the people who got them here. Especially the parents, occasionally the brothers and sisters, always the grandparents, and a few spouses along the way. So if I could ask first, if I could just single out the parents of these graduates, because I know how much these Gaylord students, soon to be graduates of this university, appreciate what you have done for them. On and on and on. Good days, bad days, you have been there for them. Please stand and give our graduates the opportunity to thank you. That made the trip worthwhile for them regardless. They've had a good day already, I can assure you. Thank you, graduates, for that. I'd like to introduce our leadership team in the college. It's a very good one. I'm very proud to work with them. Our associate dean couldn't be here because this is a very special day for him. He probably just took a bow as a parent of a OU graduate today in the College of Engineering, Dr. David Craig, so that's why he's not here. Dr. John Hockett, our Assistant Dean for Student Affairs, is here. His team organized this event, and he's been working very hard. And I don't know where John is. He's behind me. All right. He's always behind me. John Hockett, take him out. Our Director of Graduate Studies, Dr. Meta Karstarfan. And the academic heads of our majors who make such a difference in the quality of our program. Representing journalism, including print, broadcast, and online, Dr. Peter Gay. Representing strategic communication, advertising, and public relations, Professor Jim Avery. Representing media arts, professional writing, and broadcasting and electronic media, Professor Scott Hodson. I saw something in the paper this week that caught my attention, and I am of the generation that still reads the newspaper, as well as some other forms. It wasn't on BuzzFeed, graduates, I have to tell you, so I'm not sure if you saw it or not. But it was a Gallup poll of 30,000 graduates of American universities. And the big takeaway, or the question asked was, are people more satisfied, more productive, more successful if you went to an elite private university versus a large state public institution? And the basic conclusion was it really didn't make any difference, provided a couple of conditions were met. So I'll just read this. The graduates who tend to be the most productive went to a variety of colleges. I'll open this up. One of the liabilities of the printed page. But the strongest correlation for well-being emerged from those delving into, who felt emotionally supported at school by a professor or mentor. Those who were supported in that way by a professor were 3 times as likely to report they thrived as adults at those who did not have that kind of support. And I think I can say without fear of contradiction that the graduates here have thrived in that environment because they have had professors who know their names, who care about them, who push them to higher goals, and who have made a difference in their lives. And I would like to introduce that faculty to you. The article went on to say that graduates who reported having strong experiential learning opportunities were twice as likely to be engaged as adults as those who didn't. And that pleased me very much, because if you know anything about Gaylord College, you know that we are a hub of activity that has so many activities spinning around, it would be difficult for a student not to get involved outside the classroom. Whether it's Lindsay and Asp or Roots TV, the Oklahoma Daily, the Yearbook, Sooner Sports Pad, the Set, there are 28 organizations in Gaylord Hall which can engage students. And if that's a criteria for success, if the winning combination is having professors who care about you, relate to you, and you have this deep sense of experiential learning while you're there, there's no question in my mind you're on a trajectory to success that would match any in the country. I wanted to just highlight a couple of things in our college that have happened during the past year. Number one, we just completed 100 years of journalism at the University of Oklahoma and celebrated our centennial throughout 2013. We're a new college. We were only founded in 2000 with a generous gift from the Gaylord foundations. But we started teaching journalism in 1908 and became a program in 1913. So we really are one of the oldest and count among our alumni more than 11,000 Sooners, most of them very loyal supporters of this program. But some of the things that, just some of the tangible things that we, for the third year in a row in 2013, we were named an Apple Distinguished Program for our technological excellence that we give our students, the only mass communication program in the United States to be selected for that award, and the only program anywhere to be named 3 successive years in a row. The Oklahoma Daily was named a Pacemaker finalist as one of the top newspapers in the nation. We have excelled with our advertising and PR students, being named one of the top programs in the nation, and the list of accounts at Lindsay and Asp reads like the who's who of a major advertising agency, both for profit and nonprofit, as students engage in the community. Sooner Sports Pad, a program that is shown every week live on Fox Sports Oklahoma and Fox Sports Southwest, covering 9 million television households, is providing an experience for students that few in America would have an opportunity to do that kind of work. Our students are winning national awards from the National Broadcasting Society, from the BEA Festival, from Sigma Delta Chi, the National Journalism Organization. There are scores of awards being won. One of the things during the last year we're proud of our students is during the Moore tornado, several of our faculty and our students sprang into action and helped that community by aiding major news organizations in reporting on the ground when few others knew it like our students did. In fact, there's going to be a program on May 27th on the Oklahoma Education Television Network throughout Oklahoma called Hell in the Heartland, a production of Roots TV. And I would encourage you to tune into that and see some of the great work that our students are doing. And it's not only our students, but our faculty. One faculty member who's been very busy this week is Mike Betcher. Stand up, Mike. You might recognize Mike. He's a correspondent for ABC News, and just has led the news several times in the past couple of weeks. But more importantly, he's a professor in Gaylord College. On Wednesday night, in his hometown of Ponca City, they had the world premiere of a new documentary called Hornet's Nest. And each of you will have an opportunity to see this, one of the most dramatic films you will see all year, because it's later this month. It will be distributed in more than 1,000 theaters throughout the United States. So wherever you live, watch for it. The Hornet's Nest. You'll see the power of this program, of this documentary, and you'll be very proud that your son or daughter or relative had an opportunity to study with this man. One group I want to recognize that does a lot for our college a student group called the Gaylord Ambassadors. They are just that. They're people who give tours to prospective students, work with our alumni or a leadership group on our campus. And we have a record number of people leaving us in the ambassadors who are graduating today. And like Bob Stoops, we're a little concerned about how we fill those voids, but we've got a good crew coming as well. Would all the ambassadors who are graduating and those who are here today please stand and be recognized. There's a group over here in this section, 5 or 6 of them lined up over there who have just arrived in the last week from Nepal and Bangladesh, who are part of the State Department program we're doing with entrepreneurs, and give them a big Sooner welcome. One other faculty member I want to introduce, and then I'll move things along, I promise. Professor Jim Avery, come on down, stand up. Jim's the head of our advertising program and strategic communication. And this weekend, he's going to be getting on a plane and going halfway around the world. No surprise, because Jim's mostly on a plane going halfway around the world. But this time he's taking 3 students with him to Gujarat, Pakistan, a pretty exotic place in the world. Jim's been working with the university over there all semester on a project for the Ceramics Institute of Gujarat. In his account planning class, they have been working on a plan of marketing for China from the Gujarat area that could be marketed there and throughout the rest of the world. And Jim had a competition in his class. The winning team of 3 students who made the best plan and presentation are getting on a plane this Saturday and are going to have the time of their lives presenting their work 7,000 miles away in Gujarat, Pakistan. Isn't that talk about an experiential learning opportunity? Thank you. And we really appreciate having faculty with the ingenuity and making that extra effort to take care of these special experiences for our students. Now we come at the time where we help you make the transition to being an alumnus of this institution. We have an organization called JMAC. I think you'll all be granted a year's membership in that organization. It gives awards every year and helps publish our annual newsletter and underwrites our reception after this ceremony. The president of JMAC this year is Darrell Voss, a 1990 graduate of the advertising program. And you wonder, what does an advertising graduate do? Well, Darrell is a hospital administrator, formerly of the Norman Healthplex in the west of town, and now he's the director of the Ardmore Hospital. And so it shows you can use these talents in many different ways. And he's come back to lead our board, and I wanted to introduce Darrell and give him an opportunity to welcome you as part of our great alumni network.
Thank you, Dean Foote. You know, I thought this was going to be a walk in the park, but the live streaming, where's that camera at? I want to make sure. No, hey, you know, I'm 24 years out. I remember 1990, a day just like today, we're sitting where you all sit, and it's a big day, and I hope you guys soak it all in and try to. We didn't have cell phones really back then, so there wasn't a lot of picture taking going on, but try to capture today because it's really special, and you'll look back on it. But on behalf of the JMAC Alumni Association, for the Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communications, I congratulate you on achieving this significant milestone in your lives. Let me be the first to welcome you to the ranks of the alumni. of the Gaylord College. You join a group, as Dean mentioned, of over 11,000, strong and growing. Years of dedication, study, and hard work have culminated, and now your future awaits. This is your opportunity to take what you have learned and apply it to the challenges of business and in life. And while the challenges do await you, it is good to know that you're well prepared to meet them because of your education you received here at the Gaylord College. As it was right here on this campus, in this college, that my own foundation was poured. Remember, though, your education is ongoing, and you will have many more opportunities for learning. As with your undergraduate experience, the same will hold true for your alumni experience. The more involved you become, the more you will receive in experiences, contacts, and in knowledge. So as you begin your professional journey, I challenge each of you to strive for success. Visualize your dreams and achieve them. But I also challenge you to remember your heritage, where you came from, your tradition, and always to be a supporter of your college and university. JMAC's primary purpose is to foster our shared traditions and to give back to the college that supported us and gave us a foundation for successful careers. So I encourage all of you to join me and be involved in JMAC. And again, I congratulate you on a job well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. I'd now like to introduce our Assistant Dean for Student Affairs and Administration, John Hockett, who will help honor our students for their academic achievement.
Thank you, Darrell, and thank you, Dean Foote. One of the great joys of spending your professional life at a university or a college is seeing students excel and distinguishing themselves and really blossoming into the young people and young adults that they are today. The University of Oklahoma recognizes students for academic achievement in a number of ways. As a college, we will now recognize these groups of individuals. Students who maintained a grade point average of 3.8 to 3.99 are designated as graduates with special distinction. Will all of those students gathered today with special distinction please stand and remain standing to be recognized? Thank you. You may be seated. Definitely not the time to be bashful. You've earned it. Gaylord College students who maintained a grade point average of 3.6 to 3.79 are designated as graduates with distinction. Will all of those graduating with distinction please stand now? Thank you. You may be seated. The OU Honors College also recognizes students who have gone the extra mile and taken honors classes and completed an independent research project while maintaining a minimum grade point average. We will now acknowledge these groups of individuals. Students who maintain a grade point average of 3.8 to 4.0 are designated as graduating summa cum laude. Will all of those graduating summa cum laude stand and be recognized? Thank you. You may be seated. Students who maintain a grade point average of 3.6 to 3.79 are designated as graduating magna cum laude. Will all of those graduating magna cum laude stand now? Thank you. You may be seated. Those College of Honors students who maintained a grade point average of 3.4 to 3.59 are designated as graduating cum laude. Will this final group of honors students please stand to be recognized? Congratulations to each of you on your academic excellence and success. The university also invites students that meet minimum grade point averages to join one of several honor societies. Phi Beta Kappa is the nation's oldest academic honor society. This year, 11 students in the Gaylord College were inducted into Phi Beta Kappa. In addition to Phi Beta Kappa, Gaylord College students are eligible to join an honor society that recognizes academic excellence and promotes scholarship in journalism and mass communication for both undergraduate and graduate students. Right before our convocation began, we inducted our newest KTA members, and there were 24 of them this year. Will the new initiates to both Phi Beta Kappa and Kappa Tau Alpha please stand now to be recognized? Thank you. You may be seated. The Gaylord College awards undergraduate degrees in 5 majors: advertising, broadcasting and electronic media, journalism, professional writing, and public relations. Each year, the faculty select 5 students, one from each of the majors, that have exhibited excellence in their program for academic recognition. It's now my privilege to recognize the 5 students at Gaylord College for their high academic achievement and excellence here at the college. As I call your name, please stand at your seat. These are our highest academic achievement winners. In advertising, the recipient is Mr. Nicholas Howard. In broadcasting and electronic media, the recipient is Ms. Sydney Allen. In journalism, our recipient is Ms. Haley O'Hara. In professional writing, it goes to Ms. Lauren Casanua. In public relations, the recipient is Mr. Andrew Matt. Each of these students were recognized at the campus awards ceremony held in April, and they received a nice commemoration of their award. So again, congratulations to each of our outstanding highest academic achievement winners. It's now my pleasure to introduce our student speaker for this afternoon's convocation and the Gaylord College Outstanding Senior, Ms. Lindsay Fisher. Lindsay is a professional writing major with a minor in international and area studies minor. She will graduate with a perfect 4.0. A regular resident of Ann Arbor, Michigan, Lindsay grew up with a very artistic family. Her father, a glass blower, her mother, an art historian. Lindsay was able to experience the full OU experience as a student. She studied abroad in Istanbul, Turkey, had a couple of great internships, managed her own jewelry making, and even served as its vendor. She volunteered at the Fred Jones Museum of Art, was a founding member of the Sooner Curling Club, go figure, I didn't know they had one, and was an active member of the Gaylord College Professional Student Writing Association, all the while excelling academically and growing tremendously in the process. Please welcome to the podium our 2013-2014 Outstanding Senior and today's student speaker, Ms. Lindsay Fisher.
Distinguished faculty, families, and fellow graduates, good afternoon. My name is Lindsay Fisher, and I'm a member of the graduating class of 2014. Imagine a world where all things digital, including our entire electronic network of stored knowledge, disappear following a series of massive solar flares that send an electromagnetic tidal wave around the globe, in effect, silencing the age of telecommunications. This is the stuff of science fiction and even satire. Imagine a world where abruptly and without warning, your degree in mass communications is rendered obsolete. Are we more than the sum of our social media? More than our cloud storage? My answer is a resounding yes. We in the Gaylord School of Journalism and Mass Communications encompass many different endeavors, experiences, and goals. We come from unique places, backgrounds, and struggles, and when we leave the university, we will scatter to all four corners of the globe to follow our individual paths. However, we are united by one simple fact. We have all spent the past 4 years or so, in essence, honing the skill of storytelling. Whether we are covering disasters that affect the lives of people in our communities, exploring human truths and developing unique voices through fiction, or forming connective narratives through the vehicle of advertising and public relations, we all strive to make our stories well-crafted and our voices clear and resonant. Storytelling spans the entirety of human culture, from the ancient Mesopotamian epic of Gilgamesh to today's somewhat less profound, but occasionally impactful 140-character celebrity tweets. With technology in the palm of our hands and media platforms that circle the globe, we now communicate more frequently and more rapidly than ever before. But with the explosion of social media and other web-based communication outlets that we have seen grow exponentially in our lifetimes, our individual acts of storytelling, of communicating to mass audiences through our chosen field, may run the risk of becoming shallow and our work devalued or degraded. Still, I believe that as long as we take our responsibilities as professional communicators seriously and commit to contributing narratives of value and depth, our passion and our skills will retain their place of privilege in human societies. And our gift of storytelling is precisely that, a privilege. As professional storytellers, many of us will now have the honor to define a set of narratives for our communities. Communities that are both large and small, with inhabitants whose voices may already carry great weight, and those whose needs may be underrepresented. It is our responsibility to make sure that the voices which are heard and the stories that are told are as broad and diverse as not only the communities that we come from, but the lives we may touch. I can reference Uncle Ben when he tells a young Peter Parker that with great power comes great responsibility. I will end by proposing that the storytellers who sit before me pay heed to those words. As college graduates, we have great responsibility. Our choice now is about where we will go and what we will do with that gift. Let's be thankful that we have the invaluable privilege of that choice and embrace the responsibility that comes with it. This choice will come easier to some of us than others, but wherever we go and whatever we choose to do next, and perhaps even for the rest of our lives, I am confident that we will take with us the integrity, drive, and professionalism that the University of Oklahoma and Gaylord College have taught us over the past 4 years as communicators and as storytellers. Thank you, and congratulations, class of 2014.
Thank you, Lindsay. Very good advice. I mean, you are the storytellers of the future. We're proud of that. Use it wisely. It's time now for our convocation speaker, and it's been the tradition here for the past few years to ask an alum of our program to speak. Our speaker today is Eschbach, who is a sports personality. Oklahomans will probably know that name instantly. Several others may not. So let me tell you a little bit about Al. He was a student here in the 1960s, graduated in 1968, long before OU had many out-of-state students. Currently, Gaylord College has 40% of its students out of state, so they're not as much of a curiosity as they were back in the 60s. And Al came straight from New Jersey, believe me, unadulterated New Jersey. And he was a little bit of an alien when he arrived here. But he was a darn good sports writer. He was the sports editor for the Oklahoma Daily. He worked for the Norman Transcript. And then he became sports editor for the Oklahoma Journal, which was a very competitive paper in those days to the Oklahoman. And it was pretty clear that Al had the best insight of any sports columnist or sports writer in the state of Oklahoma. And he excelled at that. And I met him when I was covering OU football for KTOK and the Oklahoma News Network, and immediately developed a lot of respect for his writing skill and his insight. But when you would go to these Friday night parties before a game where the coaches would come and give you a little insight, or you saw Al in the press box, you just had the feeling that what you saw on the printed page was not the whole story. And someday this guy's persona was going to be unleashed. That happened, and the rest is history. He's been a leading sports personality on Talk Sports Radio for now 40 years in this community, and a big supporter of Gaylord College. He's been a generous donor with the H.H. Herbert Society, several of our special fundraising efforts, and he's also an adjunct professor teaching a sports writing class in our college. Any of the graduates have Al as a professor who'll admit it? Yeah, good. I assume he was a good teacher. But we're very proud to have Al here today and share his insight. I hope we don't have to provide an interpreter for him and you can all understand him, because it's just like he walked out of New Jersey. My friend and colleague, Al Eschbach.
Thank you. I bet every person in this building sometime has thought today, I hope the damn speaker doesn't go on and on and on. You're getting your wish. I have 0 notes with me. When I was asked to speak, they said, do you want to wear a cap and gown? I said, no, I'll wear a suit. Then I thought about it. Last time I wore a cap and gown, story behind it. I've told people this, but I never told them wearing a cap and gown. I was graduating the University of Oklahoma, going to summer school, taking Geology 2, which meant I flunked Geology 1. So I was taking it for a second time in summer school. 8 o'clock class in the morning. I slept through my midterm exam. I go to my professor. I said, hey, I'm a graduating senior. Can I take this exam that I slept through? He smiled and goes, if you don't pass geology, you're not a graduating senior. That was the minute I hated this guy's guts. Anyway, 2 days before graduation, I find out, yes, I did. I flunked Geology 1 for a second time. My parents were flying from Jersey City, New Jersey, to see me graduate and then take me on a cruise to the Bahamas. What do I do? What do I do? I'm panicking. I go to the head of the journalism school, man then C. Joe Holland. What do? He says, get a cap and gown and go through graduation with everybody else. Is that the advice you would have given me? My parents come out, I got a cap and gown on, I'm going through graduation. They never knew on that day I didn't graduate, to the dying day. I told them that I was going to graduate school the next semester. But it gets worse. Since I had 8 hours of F in geology, my grade point dipped under a 2 point. I had to take a professional writing course to get a B in it, 3 hours, and pass geology. I got a C in geology, I got a B in my professional writing, and I guess I would have gotten a dumbass award for graduating with a 2 point. I see all you people with 3.8s and all this stuff. Yeah. I graduated with a 2.0000, as low as you could get. And you know what? I'm really proud of it. My heart is with print. That's what I started out as. And when I was sports editor, it helped me. You all always had favorite teachers and favorite courses, right? My favorite teacher, Professor Barry Switzer. The Theory of Football. What a great course. Anyway, I take my exam. And Barry goes, "You didn't do real well, Al, but you know what? I'm going to give you an A, because someday if I do this, you may not write anything bad about me." If I didn't get 3 hours of A, I'd still be in college trying to get out. Some things bothered me in the world of journalism. You're all finding out things have changed. Sadly, newspapers are dying. And you're finding different ways to get jobs. Pet peeve of mine, when somebody, instead of just reporting the news, they try to create the news. ESPN came along over 30 years ago, right? Did a magnificent job. But all of a sudden, they are trying to create the news instead of just reporting it. Saw it a few years ago with Tim Tebow. They made this guy a folk hero. And everybody that took my class knows how much I hate Tim Tebow. And they just didn't report the news. This thing, it made me sick. Thursday night, I'm watching the NFL draft. Johnny Manziel. They're not reporting the news. They're just trying to make the news. And Thursday night, I officially hated Johnny Manziel for the rest of my life. What I want to leave you with, and this is the most important thing I want to say today. Being a college graduate, please don't take it for granted what you've done. Don't take for granted how you busted your butt all your life. I don't care if everybody, your mother and father went to college and you got a degree. I don't care if your brother and sister got a degree. I don't care if all your friends got a degree. You are the minority around the country. You are the minority around the world. Cherish it the rest of your life. Cherish what you have earned. It's special. I was the first person in my family ever to go to college. First person to get a degree, later than sooner. But please, and you got a degree from a school that is, my goodness, you can't imagine how far the University of Oklahoma has come in journalism. Be proud of what you accomplished and cherish it. One last thing, probably the most important thing I've said too. So skip what I just said. Please don't party as hard as I did the night of my graduation or fake graduation. Because when I graduated, there was no such thing as a DUI. Thank you.
One of the most used cliches is that you'll never remember what your graduation speaker said. But somehow I think Al Eschbach defies those odds. And thank goodness he was unleashed from print to have the full measure of his persona. Al, we want to give you a little token. We may check to make sure you indeed graduated, but assuming you did, we just want to thank you for all you do for our college. Thank you. I would now like to ask our graduate director and associate professor, Dr. Meta Karstarfan, to come forward and preside over the hooding of our graduate candidates.
Thank you, Dr. Foote, Dean Foote. Before I begin, I'm going to rearrange furniture just a little bit, and I may ask for help from Dr. Davis. That spot is going to become very important in a few minutes. Keep your eye on it. From medieval times, academic dress has included 3 items: cap, gown, and hood. The black gown and mortarboard are traditional. Holders of master's and doctoral degrees wear a hood that identifies the degree. The doctoral hoods are longer in the back than the master's hoods. The lining of the hood displays the official colors of the college or university conferring the degree. The color of the velvet band around the neck indicates the scholar's field of study. In our case, the color is crimson, signifying journalism and mass communication. Now, it is my pleasure to announce several students who have completed the requirements of our doctoral program, but who are not all present, but we want to acknowledge them because we had kind of a banner year in terms of doctoral students completing our program. There's Dr. Josh Bentley, whose major professor was Dr. Maureen Taylor, Dr. Brian Carr, who was my advisee, Dr. Nurashan Yursal, whose major professor was Dr. Katerina Tetsura, and Dr. Jared Schroeder, whose major professor was Dr. Robert Kerr. Each of them have accepted positions at respected institutions. Dr. Bentley is at the University of New Mexico, Dr. Carr is at the University of Wisconsin at Green Bay, Dr. Yursal is at Marquette University, and Dr. Schroeder is at Augustana College outside of Chicago. Can we take a moment and acknowledge in absentia our doctoral students? Except for one. Thank you. I also want to take this moment to acknowledge the special accomplishments of Mr. Adam Saffer. Adam, would you stand? Adam Saffer has completed, yes, we're going to clap. Many of you have had him as a teacher in your classes. Adam Saffer is Dr. Maureen Taylor's advisee. He has completed his qualifying exams, no small task, and will complete his dissertation this summer. He has accepted a position at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Adam, congratulations. Now I want to take this moment to officially hood the only one of our doctoral students who could be back with us today. Dr. Brian Carr, would you come to the front of the stage? Thank you. Dr. Brian Carr. He'll be in the receiving line later as we greet our undergraduates. Some of you have been in classes with them, I'm sure. Now it is my pleasure to present to you for hooding the students who have completed the requirements for the degrees of Master of Arts in Journalism and Mass Communication or Master of Professional Writing. Professors who have chaired or served on their thesis, project, or exam committees will hood the candidates who are receiving degrees today. Master's candidates, will you line up? Thank you. The first group of students to receive their master's hoods will be those receiving their Master's of Professional Writing. Will Dr. Jim Davis please come forward to perform the honor of hooding the professional writing students. Lara Hernandez. Rebecca Horner. Hollis McMasters. Catherine Roth. Dr. Keith Gaddy is not here, so in his absence, Dr. Davis will hood Mr. Scott Carter. Please congratulate the students on the completion of their Master of Professional Writing. The next group of students will receive their hoods in recognition of the completion of their Master of Arts in Journalism and Mass Communication. Dr. Ralph Beliveau, will you please come forward and perform the honor of hooding your student? Brent Weber. Awesome. Thank you. Dr. Owen Kulameka, would you please come forward and perform the honor of hooding your students? Adebemi Aderemi Okanade, or Bami. Harriet Orleans. Xiao Peng. Good job. Professor John Smeltzer, thank you. Would you please come forward to perform the honor of hooding your students? Ms. Jennifer Matthews. Ms. Rashmi Tapalia. Thank you. Dr. Katerina Tsetsura, would you please come forward to perform the honor of hooding your students? Ms. Kelsey Aziz. Ms. Tom Nguyen. Thank you, Dr. Setsura. I now have the honor of hooding 3 of my advisees in the following order: Lauren, Floyd, Bianca Gordon, and Dana Hatfield. Congratulations to our new degree recipients.
Is this thing on? All right, it's now time to recognize the undergraduate students who are receiving a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and Mass Communication. Will the undergraduate spring class of 2014 and any winter 2013 graduates please stand? Dean Foote, the candidates who stand before you today embody the undergraduate mission of the Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication. They value and protect freedom of expression. They welcome and encourage intellectual and cultural diversity. They exercise critical thinking, and they are creative, ethical, skilled, and socially responsible. They have fulfilled all degree program requirements for a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism from the University of Oklahoma. On behalf of the faculty of the Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication, it is my great pleasure to recommend to you each of these individuals for you to bestow upon them their respective degrees. I offer to you the spring class of 2014 and winter 2013 graduates.
Thank you, Dean Hockett. University of Oklahoma Board of Regents grants to President David L. Boren the authority to formally confer degrees upon each of the students at a commencement ceremony that was held last night. President Boren has delegated to me the authority to honor each of you in this convocation today upon completion of the work for your degrees. Therefore, it is my great pleasure to congratulate you for your achievement in completing your degree and to recognize each of you individually as you receive your degree certificates with all the rights, perquisites, and privileges due to you. Ladies and gentlemen, the class of 2014. Dean Hockett will now announce your names as you cross the stage and receive your diplomas. And then faculty can add their congratulations as well.
Thank you, Dean Foote. As the candidates line up to receive their degrees, family and friends should feel free to take pictures, shout with joy when your graduate's name is read. But we ask that you try not to leave your seats to take photos. We'll have official photographers with party pics that'll be snapping the events today. Our first group of students we will recognize are our advertising majors. Our first advertising graduate is David Taylor. Shannon Sandiford. Jade Pierce. Olivia Price. Courtney Parmalee. Taylor Trevino. Hillary Groutman. Kirsten Halvand. Ryan Kitchens. Alex Ratcliffe. Annabelle Wallace. Jordan Jones. Brooke Stewart. Claire McFarland. Morgan Flowers. Marie Kane. Grace Rivers. Ashley Myers. Jordan Zabalak. Madison Barnes. Cassidy Cope. Meredith Hudson. Kelly Daniel. Matthew Griffin. Ryan Coughlin Blackburn. Clayton Hooper. Brady Bowers. Olivia Staff. Sarah J. Brittany Marie Weaver. Paige Pinkerton. Jennifer Trong. Chelsea Banks. Allison Marino. Haley Mayfield. Taylor Bolton. Katie Pickens. Rebecca Benfield. Danielle Dubrow. Sarah Yukiyoung Choi. Sarah Stallings. Andrea Cochran. Nicholas Howard. Haley Crabtree. Colin Williams. Caroline Mortal. Ashley Stevens. Chris Fotopoulos. This will conclude our advertising sequence majors. We will now recognize our broadcasting and electronic media students. Our first graduate is Chase O'Hara. Nicholas Philip Hudkins. Nima Taj Baksha. Caleb Brown. Rebecca Buckner. Christy Vanden Havel. Missy Jones Hunter. Kristen Leach. Sydney Allen. Shelby Galloway. Courtney Ashley. Destiny Faye Darby. Sarah Groover. Lauren Ashton Hines. Jacqueline Michelle Church. Nichelle Johns. Jared Bills. Daryl Lynn King. Daniel King Crowley. Amanda Jensen. Brittany Harris. Kenzie Clark. Zane Blanchard. Ryan Boyce. Justin Voda. Hunter Clausen. Michael John Halligan II. This will conclude our broadcasting and electronic media students. We will now recognize our journalism major. Our first recipient is Haley O'Hara. Kenzie Meek Beck. Amy Slanchik. Stacy Summerby. Lauren Nevitt. Nadia Judith Inchaussee. Ajinur Oygur Sedawaldi. Gregory Fuel. Brett Kopenbarger. Marky Macaulay White. Jessica Bruno. Jessica Wilder. Julia Nelson. Shelby Ann Snyder. Chad Hudson. Joey Adams. Zachary Machin. Ryan Gerbosi. Catherine Ann McPherson. Alexandra Niblett. Brittany Bella. Rachel Goodwin. Breon Sumlin. Hillary Ann DeBryan. Marley Dablow. Miranda Fogel. Emma Kittle. Emily Alston. Madison Markwood. Michael Fox. Catherine Brandon. Becca Slaughter. Samantha Waddle. This will complete our journalism students. We will next recognize our professional writing students. Our first professional writing student, Vincent Landino. Lauren Cassignan. Lindsay Fisher. Alyssa May Skirby. Shelby Lynn Edwards. Annie Del Signore. Kelsey Dunkel. Kyle Marjoram. Elisa Johnson. Stormy Jones. Dylan Phillips. Catherine Economo. Abby Kinsinger. first graduate is Catherine Clark. Christopher M. Cram. Deani King. Andrew S. Matt. Kendall Kramer. Kristen Carter. Araceli Baeza. Layla Wani. Emily Corsi. Alyssa Roberts. Laura Wilcox. Andrea Pemberton. Amy Miller. Alexandra Lett. Brooke Heath DeMiranda. Amanda E. Smith. Ashley Fergus. Amber Johnson. Catherine Bain. Cheryl Fender. Brooke Hankinson. Patrick Hayes. Jenna Partain. Kelly Wright. John Cook. Rebecca K. Swanson. Emily Copeland. Elizabeth McLean Stone. Kevin McMahon. Courtney Rose Blossy. Lindsay Mummy. Shelby Todd. Francesca Shirk. Mary Madison Baker. Shelby Nicole Dunham. Laura Lee Morgan. Alexander Nichols Nichols. Sierra Elizabeth Christian. Brooke Elizabeth Tomlinson. Lauren Renee Matheson. Josette Messiah. Michaela Ewald. Rachel Tillman. Fallon Jolly. Quincy Taylor. Maggie Boker. Sydney Chase. Madison Pace. Amanda Hall. Brandon Morrow. Melanie Sochita. Ashley Winsel. Marissa Dubois. Jacqueline Bellow. And our final public relations graduate is Emily Otness. Well, congratulations to all of our graduates. Please give them a nice hand. We began a new tradition last year as part of the Gaylord College's centennial celebration. We will have our outstanding senior, Ms. Lindsay Fisher, come back to the main podium and lead our new graduates in reciting the First Amendment. This is one of the first lessons for new journalism students entering the college, and we think a suitable tradition for closing out your time as students.
Fellow graduates, please recite along with me the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances.
Very fitting end to our program today. Thank you for attending our convocation. We'll ask that you remain seated until all of the platform party and the graduates have filed out. I know you're anxious to get with your families and get to lunch, but I want to remind you we'll have a short reception in Gaylord Hall if you'd like to visit more with the faculty and perhaps show your family around our beautiful facilities. Now I'd like to ask one of our ambassadors and an incoming member of Payette OU's Top 10 Honor Society, Kaylee Frisbee, to lead us in the OU chant.
If you'll please stand and raise your right hand.
Mm-hmm.